Truckers spend more nights on the road than most of us ever will. Long highways, empty rest stops, and stretches of darkness become part of their daily lives. And it's in those moments that some of the scariest stories take shape. While most of us sleep safely in our beds, truckers keep moving, carrying goods through towns and across states. But when the road is quiet and the world around you feels empty, that's when your imagination runs wild, or worse, when something real steps in. Tonight, I'll share 3 scary long-haul trucker stories that will haunt you. These aren't just ghost tales, they re-experiences told by drivers who swore what happened to them was real, even if they wished it wasn't. So if you're watching this at night, buckle up, because these stories don't happen in crowded places. They happen out there, on the loneliest roads, where help is miles away and the only company you might have is something you can explain. Let us start with the first story, a late-night drive that turned into a memory the trucker still can shake. The first story comes from a trucker who was hauling through the Midwest on a quiet stretch of highway. It was close to midnight, the kind of drive where the road seems endless, and the only lights are from your own headlights. He'd been driving for hours, fighting to stay alert. The CB radio was silent, no chatter from other drivers, and even the gas stations had thinned out. It was just him, the road, and the hum of the engine. That's when he saw her, a woman standing on the shoulder of the highway, her clothes pale against the dark backdrop. She didn't wave, didn't move, just stood there staring at the passing trucks. At first, he thought maybe her car had broken down, but there wasn't a single vehicle nearby. No hazard lights, nothing. Just her, in the middle of nowhere. He slowed down, debating whether to pull over, but something about her posture made him uneasy. She wasn't looking for help, she was just staring, almost too still, like a mannequin left on the side of the road. As he passed, he glanced into her side mirror. She was gone, not walking away, not fading into the distance, just gone. The empty shoulder stretched back for miles, with no sign of her. He told himself it was exhaustion, maybe a trick of the headlights. Long nights on the road can play games with your mind. But the next night, on a completely different stretch of highway, he saw her again. Same pale clothes, same posture, standing by the roadside. This time, he didn't slow down. His gut told him not to. He pressed harder on the accelerator and kept his eyes forward. When he checked a mirror, she was there again, but not on the shoulder. This time, she was standing in the middle of the road behind him, staring after the truck as it sped away. By the time he reached the next truck stop, his hands were shaking. He told a couple of other drivers what he'd seen, expecting laughter. But instead, one of them just nodded slowly and said, "You saw her too, didn't you?" They explained that truckers in that region had passed down stories about a woman who appears on the highways at night. Some say she was a hitchhiker who died decades ago. Others claim she's something darker, luring drivers to stop. The older trucker warned him, "If you see her again, don't stop." No matter what, that advice stuck with him, but part of him wondered what would happen if someone actually did stop. A week later, he was driving through another long haul, this time in heavy rain. The road glistened with water, wipers squeaking across the glass, and through the storm, there she was again. This time, she wasn't on the shoulder. She stood directly in the right lane, forcing him to swerve at the last second. His horn blared, tires screeched, but when he looked in the mirror, the road was empty, heart pounding. He pulled over at the next rest stop and checked his rig. Convinced he'd hit someone, the bumper was clean. No dents, no scratches, just rainwater dripping into puddles below. He sat there for a long time, headlights illuminating the wet pavement. That's when he noticed something strange, a single wet footprint on the passenger side step, as if someone had climbed up and vanished. Shaken, he climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and pulled away. Every so often, he glanced at the passenger seat, half expecting her to be sitting there. Thankfully, it stayed empty. But when he finally parked for the night and leaned back to rest, he swore he heard a soft tapping on the glass, 3 slow knocks on the passenger window. He pulled the curtain shut and forced himself to sleep, though it felt like the longest night of his life. By morning, there were no signs of anything unusual, just the memory that kept replaying in his mind. Other drivers later told him similar stories. Some said she tried to wave them down. Others claimed they saw her in their mirrors, sitting in the back of their cabs, only for her to vanish when they turned around. To this day, he refuses to drive through that region at night. He'll wait at a truck stop until dawn, even if it costs him hours, because after seeing her 3 times, he's convinced she's not just a story, and he's not alone. Dozens of truckers have described the same woman, always on lonely highways, always at night, always watching. Some chalk it up to fatigue and road illusions, but others believe she's real and that once you see her, she'll keep appearing, no matter how far you drive. That's what makes this story so chilling. It's not just a one-off encounter, it's the idea that the road itself might remember you and bring her back every time you pass through. Imagine driving through miles of darkness, no one else around, and spotting her figure standing there, waiting. Would you stop? Or would you keep going, knowing she might follow you in the mirror? For him, the answer was clear: never stop. And honestly, after hearing his story, I don't think I would either. That was the first story, creepy enough on its own, right? But the next one isn't about a ghostly figure, it's about something much more real, and maybe even scarier. because while ghosts might haunt you, people can hurt you. And this trucker's story proves that sometimes, the living are far more dangerous than the dead. So let us move on to story number 2, a late night stop that turned into a fight for safety on the side of the road. And honestly, this one might make you think twice about ever pulling over at a rest stop again. The second story comes from a trucker who had been driving through the Southwest. Endless desert stretched on either side, the kind of place where the silence feels heavy and there's nowhere to hide from the sun by day or the darkness at night. He pulled into a small rest stop around 2 a.m. to stretch his legs and grab a quick nap. Only one other car sat in the lot, a beat-up sedan with fogged windows. He didn't think much of it. Rest stops attract all kinds of travelers. After using the restroom, he returned to his rig and climbed inside. He'd just leaned back to close his eyes when he noticed movement in his side mirror. 2 figures stepped out of the sedan and began walking slowly toward his truck. At first, he thought maybe they needed help, but something about their pace made him uneasy. They weren't rushing, weren't signaling, just closing in, deliberate and silent. His instincts kicked in. He locked the doors, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The figures froze for a second, then one of them tapped on the passenger side door with a knuckle. The sound echoed through the cab, sharp and deliberate. "Hey man, got a light?" one of them called out. The voice sounded wrong to come for the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. He shook his head and gestured no, hoping they'd back off. Instead, the second figure tried the door handle, jiggling it hard enough to rattle the frame. Adrenaline surged, he slammed the truck into gear and pulled forward. In his mirror, he saw the 2 figures dash back to their sedan, but they didn't leave. Instead, they just sat there with their headlights off, watching. He pulled onto the highway, heart racing. But a few miles later, those same headlights appeared in his mirror. The sedan was following him. He pressed harder on the accelerator, trying to put distance between them. But every time he switched lanes or adjusted speed, the car matched him. It was no coincidence they were tailing him. For nearly 20 minutes, the game continued. Finally, he spotted another trucker up ahead and flashed his high beams twice. The signal for trouble. The other trucker slowed to let him catch up. Together, the 2 rigs boxed in the sedan, forcing it to drop back. The truckers held formation until they reached a larger, well-lit rest stop with security cameras. Only then did the sedan peel away into the night. Shaken, he explained what had happened to the other driver. The older trucker just nodded grimly. "Happens more than you think out here," he said. "People looking to rob or worse. You did the right thing not opening that door." Later, he checked his dashcam footage. The 2 figures had circled his truck more than once before he noticed them. One even tried climbing onto the step beneath the passenger door. The thought of what might have happened if he hadn't locked up chilled him. He reported the incident to Highway Patrol, but with so few details, there wasn't much they could do. The sedan was just another shadow on an endless road. From that night on, he swore never to stop at small, isolated rest areas after dark. He planned his trips around bigger truck stops with lights, cameras, and people nearby. He admitted that ghosts never scared him. But people, the desperate, the reckless, the ones who see a lone trucker as an easy target, those were the real nightmares on the road. Because out there, miles from help, the wrong knock on your window could be the last sound you ever hear. And honestly, hearing his story made me realize something. Sometimes we romanticize the idea of the open road, but for truckers, it's a daily gamble. Every stop is a risk. Every stranger could be harmless or not, and you never know which it is until it's too late. That's what makes this story so chilling. It's not about the supernatural-ette. It's about the unsettling reality that danger doesn't always hide in shadows. Sometimes it walks right up to your door and knocks. The trucker never saw that sedan again, but he never forgot the way those figures moved. Slow and deliberate, like they knew he had nowhere to go. And honestly, when I think about it, I don't know what's worse, a ghost on the highway, or 2 strangers in the night with bad intentions. That was story number 2. Creepy, right? But the last story takes things even further. Because while the first was about something unexplained, and the second about something all too human, the third story combines both. It's the kind of experience that leaves a trucker wondering if they ran into something supernatural, or something that exists just outside what we understand. This one happened on a remote stretch of highway in the Pacific Northwest. Surrounded by forests that feel like they could swallow you whole, the trucker thought he was just in for another long, quiet night. But what he saw out there still haunts him to this day. And after hearing it, you might think twice about driving alone at night on those endless forest roads. So buckle up, because story number 3 might just be the one that stays with you long after this video ends. Here's how it began. The last story comes from a trucker hauling lumber through the Pacific Northwest. His route cut through miles of dense forest, with stretches so empty he could drive an hour without passing another vehicle. It was late, past midnight, when fog rolled in thick enough to blur the treetops. His headlights carved narrow tunnels of light, and the road felt like it was shrinking under the weight of silence. He was used to quiet drives, but this one felt different. He couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Every glance at the mirrors made him think he'd see another set of headlights behind him. But the road stayed empty.
Then, out of nowhere, his radio crackled, not music, not a voice he recognized, just static, followed by a faint whisper that cut through for half a second before vanishing. He told himself it was interference, maybe another trucker out of range. But the whispers came back, louder this time, like someone mumbling just behind his seat. He turned the radio off completely. For a few minutes, it was quiet again, until his high beams caught something up ahead. A figure stood on the shoulder of the road, tall, thin, almost unnaturally still. As he passed,
its head turned slowly, tracking the truck with movements too smooth to be natural. His stomach dropped. He pressed harder on the gas, eyes locked forward. But when he checked his mirror, the figure was gone, no trace of it in the fog, no footsteps on the shoulder. A mile later, he saw it again, this time standing closer to the road, its shape sharper in the beams. He swore it hadn't had a face, just a blank patch of pale skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. Panic set in. He knew he couldn't keep driving like this forever. The next turnout couldn't come fast enough. But the figure kept appearing, sometimes on the shoulder, sometimes further down the road, always ahead of him. Finally, he spotted a small rest area and pulled in fast, gravel crunching under his tires. He killed the lights and sat in the dark, gripping the wheel, forcing his breath to steady. For a moment, the lot looked empty. Just a few picnic tables, a trash can, and fog curling low to the ground. He let out a shaky laugh, telling himself fatigue was playing tricks. But then he saw it, the figure standing at the far edge of the lot. Motionless facing him, he flicked his lights back on, blasting the fog with beams. But the figure was gone, just trees and mist. Thinking he'd lost it, he settled back, trying to calm down. That's when something hit his trailer, 3 heavy bangs, like fists slamming into metal. He jumped, heart pounding, and checked his mirrors. Nothing, just the empty lot behind him. When he climbed out with his flashlight, there were no marks on the trailer, no footprints in the gravel, just silence and fog pressing in from every side. He climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and refused to move until the sun started rising. Only then did the forest seem to loosen its grip, the fog thinning into harmless morning haze. Later, when he shared his story with other truckers, a few nodded knowingly. They said the forests out there are filled with things people don't talk about, things that watch, follow, and sometimes test you. Some called it a spirit, others said it was just a story passed around to spook rookies. But he knew what he saw, and nothing anyone said could convince him otherwise. The detail that stuck with him most wasn't the figure itself, it was the sound of those 3 bangs on his trailer. He felt them vibrate through the cab, too real to be his imagination. He admitted he never took that route again at night. If his schedule forced him through the forest, he waited until daylight, even if it meant missing delivery times. And honestly, I don't blame him, because whether it was something supernatural or not, that kind of fear stays with you long after the road ends. Some truckers joked that the forest has guardians, watching anyone who passes through. Others whispered about missing drivers whose rigs were found abandoned in those woods. Whatever the truth is, his story is a reminder that not every horror needs an explanation. Sometimes, it's scarier not knowing what you saw, because on long hauls, especially through places untouched by towns or people, the line between the natural and the unnatural can blur fast. That was the third story. 3 different truckers, 3 very different nights, but each one left with an experience they'd never forget. And whether you believe in ghosts, or think people are scarier than spirits, one thing is certain. Life on the road isn't just tough, it can be terrifying. Every trucker has a story. Some are funny, some are strange, and some, like these, stay with them forever. And after hearing them, I think it is safe to say the highway holds more secrets than we ever know. And that wraps up these 3 scary long-haul trucker stories. Each one different, but all carrying the same unsettling theme. When you're out there on the open road, you're never truly alone. Maybe it's something supernatural, like the woman on the highway. Maybe it's something real, like strangers at a rest stop. Or maybe it's something we can't explain, like the figure in the forest. The truth is, truckers see things most of us never will. They spend their lives in the in-between, between towns, between states, between night and morning. And sometimes, that's where the scariest things live. So what do you think? Were these just stories of fatigue and paranoia? Or was there something darker out there waiting on those empty highways? Share your thoughts in the comments side. Love to hear what you believe. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more creepy true stories every week. Thanks for watching. And next time you're driving at night, maybe check your mirrors twice.